My name is Sarah Ann Whitmore, and I'm a 39-year-old middle school counselor from Madison, Wisconsin. For most of my life, I considered myself a quiet believer. I loved God, I believed in Jesus, and I prayed. But if I'm being honest, prayer often felt like something I was supposed to do, not something that truly changed anything. What I'm about to share with you is not something I ever planned to tell publicly. In fact, for a long time I tried to convince myself to stay silent. But what I was shown was too important, too real, and too urgent. This is my testimony of what happened when I died, and what Jesus revealed to me about faith, prayer, and the unseen battle taking place around us every single day. It began on October 14, 2025. That morning felt painfully ordinary. The kind of ordinary you never expect to become the dividing line between before and after. The air was crisp, the leaves in Wisconsin had already turned, and the sky was a dull gray that promised rain by afternoon. I remember standing in my kitchen, sipping coffee that had already gone cold, scrolling through emails from parents and teachers on my phone. I had skipped breakfast again. I told myself I'd eat later. By 10:30 a.m. I was sitting in my office at school, listening to a 7th grade girl talk about her anxiety before a big math test. I smiled, nodded, offered reassurance, doing what I had done hundreds of times before. But somewhere in the middle of her sentence, the room began to tilt. At first I thought it was stress, or dehydration, or maybe just another sign that I was pushing myself too hard. I remember gripping the edge of my desk, waiting for the dizziness to pass. It didn't. Instead, a sudden, crushing weight settled in my chest. My breathing became shallow, sharp, wrong. The fluorescent lights above me seemed too bright, too distant. The girl's voice faded into a dull echo. I tried to stand. I never made it. Later, I would be told that I collapsed just outside my office door. That a teacher nearby heard the sound and ran to me. That my lips had turned blue. That my heart rhythm was chaotic. That someone called 911 while another person began CPR on the hallway floor. But at the time I knew none of that. What I remember is the cold linoleum against my cheek. The faint smell of disinfectant. The muffled sound of lockers slamming somewhere far away. And one single thought, clear and calm, cutting through the panic. This is it. There was no dramatic fear. No screaming in my mind. Just a strange, heavy certainty that my life was slipping away faster than I could comprehend. Then, everything stopped. The pain vanished. The noise disappeared. The weight of my body was gone. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, the world I had always known simply ceased. And I crossed into something I had never been taught how to explain. Something that would forever change how I understood faith, prayer, and the love of God. I didn't move through darkness. I didn't float through a tunnel. There was no sensation of traveling at all. One moment I was gone from my body, and the next I was, where? Awake. Fully present. I found myself standing in what I can only describe as a reality that felt more real than the one I had left behind. There was no ground beneath my feet, yet I was not falling. No sky above me, yet everything was filled with light. Not light like the sun, but a living brightness that seemed to breathe. Time did not behave the way it does on Earth. There was no urgency. No sequence. Everything existed at once, perfectly ordered, perfectly still. The first thing I noticed was the absence of pain. The crushing pressure in my chest was gone. The desperate need for air had vanished. Every ache, every tension I had carried for years, physically and emotionally, was simply not there anymore. In its place was a peace so deep it felt impossible that I had ever lived without it. Wrapped around me. Through me. Like being known completely and loved anyway. I remember thinking, not with words but with understanding, so this is what wholeness feels like. Then I became aware that I was not alone. I didn't see him at first. I felt him. A presence so overwhelming in authority that it could have undone me, yet so gentle that it felt safer than anything I had ever known. Before a single word was spoken, I understood something with absolute certainty. I was standing in the presence of Jesus. When he spoke my name, it wasn't just a sound. It was recognition. Sarah. In that one word I felt seen, not as I appeared to others, not as I tried to be, but as I truly was. Every hidden fear. Every silent prayer. Every moment of doubt I had never voiced aloud. None of it repelled him. His voice carried power but never pressure. Truth but never condemnation. "My daughter," he said, "you are here because I want to show you what your eyes could not see." I tried to respond, but words felt unnecessary. Communication didn't rely on language here. Meaning flowed instantly, clearly, without confusion. He didn't appear as I had imagined from paintings or movies. There was form, yes, but also glory beyond form. Light that did not blind, yet revealed everything. Looking at him didn't strain my vision. It healed it. I wanted to fall to my knees, but there was no posture required. Worship happened naturally, like breathing. Then, without warning, the space around us changed. What unfolded before me looked like scenes layered on top of one another. Moments from my own life, but viewed from a perspective I had never known existed. I could see my childhood bedroom, my college dorm, my small apartment after marriage, my kitchen table where I had prayed quietly, often distracted, often unsure if anyone was really listening. And then I saw something that made my heart tremble. Behind each moment, behind every ordinary scene, I saw movement. The unseen world. Dark shapes lingered at the edges. Watching. Waiting. Organizing. They were not chaotic or random. They were intentional. Patient. I felt a wave of realization wash over me, heavy and sobering. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't symbolism. This was reality hidden from human eyes. And Jesus allowed me to see it. Watch, he said. And I did. I watched moments when I prayed, and moments when I didn't. I saw how the atmosphere shifted when my lips whispered even the simplest prayer. I saw how resistance formed before I ever spoke a word. I saw how distractions weren't accidental, how exhaustion wasn't always natural, how the urge to delay prayer was often planted, not chosen. My understanding of spiritual life shattered and reformed in an instant. I had thought prayer was quiet. I had thought prayer was passive. I had been so wrong. And what Jesus was about to show me next would forever change how I understood faith, love, and the battle being fought over every soul. Even now, as you listen to my voice. As the scenes continued to unfold, Jesus stood beside me, not distant, not silent, but attentive, like a teacher patiently guiding a student through a lesson long overdue. I watched myself in moments I had forgotten. Early mornings when my alarm rang and I lay still, already exhausted before the day began. Evenings when I sat on the edge of my bed, Bible open, phone buzzing beside me, telling myself I would pray after just one more notification. Lunch breaks when I felt a gentle nudge to whisper a prayer and chose instead to scroll, to think, to rush. And every time, every single time, something stirred in the unseen realm. I saw dark figures respond instantly to hesitation. Not with celebration at first, but with calculation. They did not rush. They waited. They knew how often delay turned into silence. Then Jesus allowed me to see what happened when I did pray. Not eloquent prayers. Not long prayers. Just honest ones. Jesus, help me today. Please protect my family. I don't have the strength, you do. The moment those words left my heart, the atmosphere changed. It was as if a shockwave rippled outward. What looked like fortified structures, carefully constructed, layered, reinforced over time, began to fracture. These weren't random barriers. They were strongholds. Systems built slowly through fear, distraction, resentment, and unbelief. I watched in awe as a single prayer caused cracks to spread through them like lightning through stone. Jesus turned to me. Prayer is not what you thought it was, he said. It is not a ritual. It is not a performance. It is agreement with heaven. I saw demons recoil, not from my voice but from his name. When I whispered in Jesus' name, it was as though authority was activated. They recognized it instantly. There was no debate. No resistance. Only retreat. Then he showed me something that broke my heart. I saw moments when I almost prayed. Times when I felt prompted to pray for a student struggling at home. For a colleague battling quiet despair. For my husband when tension sat unspoken between us. In those moments I hesitated, and the opportunity passed. In the unseen realm, those moments looked like doors left unopened. Protection delayed. Breakthrough waiting. Yet, there was no condemnation in his presence. Only sorrow, not angry sorrow but the grief of love watching opportunity slip by. Sarah, Jesus said gently, I never withdrew my invitation. He showed me himself standing patiently in those moments. Waiting. Always waiting. Never forcing. Never leaving. Then he revealed the enemy's strategy. I saw how exhaustion was amplified just before prayer. How sudden thoughts of responsibility flooded my mind at the exact moment I reached for God. How false urgency disguised itself as importance. Answer this first. Do it later. You'll pray tomorrow. Each lie seemed small, reasonable, harmless. But together they built silence. And silence I now saw was not neutral. Silence was ground surrendered. Then Jesus showed me something extraordinary. I watched a night when I had pushed past fatigue and prayed anyway. It hadn't been long, maybe 2 minutes. I had felt unimpressive, distracted, weak. But in the spiritual realm, that prayer struck like a weapon. It shattered a structure the enemy had been building for months. Plans unraveled. Assignments collapsed. Confusion spread among the dark forces as they scrambled to regroup. I felt stunned. That prayer, Jesus said, protected people you will never meet. I understood then. Prayer was never only about me. It moved through time, through people, through generations. And I was only beginning to see the depth of what had always been placed in my hands. The scene before me widened as if the veil had been pulled back even further. I could now see beyond my own life. Streets, homes, classrooms, ordinary people moving through ordinary days, completely unaware that a spiritual battle was unfolding all around them. It wasn't chaotic or dramatic the way movies portray it. It was calculated, organized, constant. Jesus showed me how different forces were assigned with precision. Some worked to distract believers just before prayer. Others specialized in wearing people down emotionally, whispering that rest mattered more than connection with God. Still others created subtle doubts. Does prayer really matter? Does anyone hear you? Then he showed me the opposite side. Angels, real, powerful, focused, stationed around those who prayed consistently. They did not act independently. They waited. They moved when prayer aligned with God's will. Prayer strengthened them, activated them, directed them. I watched as a simple prayer spoken by a tired mother caused angels to move into action over her children's lives. I saw prayers prayed years ago still echoing, still dismantling plans that had not yet fully formed. Time had no authority here. That's when I saw my own family line. My mother. My grandmother. Women whose prayers I had often taken for granted. I saw their prayers rising like threads of light, woven together across generations, forming a protective covering that the enemy could not penetrate. Even during seasons when I had prayed less, their faith had carried me. Tears streamed down my face. Prayer does not expire, Jesus said. Love spoken to me in faith is eternal. Then he showed me something that stunned me. Short prayers. The kind whispered while driving. The kind spoken under one's breath before a meeting. The kind uttered in desperation with no time for structure. Each one mattered. I saw how the enemy had worked tirelessly to convince believers that unless prayer was long, uninterrupted, and perfectly focused, it was ineffective. That lie alone had silenced millions. But heaven never measured prayer by length. Only by sincerity. I watched as a rushed prayer I had prayed while unlocking my classroom door caused a ripple that disrupted fear attempting to settle over my students that day. I had never noticed anything different in the natural. But in the spiritual realm, something had shifted. Jesus turned to me. The enemy fears the prayer that is about to be prayed, he said. That is why resistance rises just before it. Then the vision shifted again. I saw dark figures gathering, conferring urgently. Their tone was not confident. It was frustrated. She's learning, one said. The prayers are becoming consistent, another warned. We must increase distractions, a third insisted. They were not afraid of church attendance. They were not threatened by good intentions. They feared understanding. Because once a believer understands the power of prayer rooted in faith and love for God, silence is no longer easy to enforce. Then Jesus showed me something that broke my heart. Countless believers, teachers, parents, workers, each carrying assignments of prayer they had never stepped into. Not because they lacked faith but because they had been convinced their prayers were insignificant. I watched as prayers that could have been prayed hovered like unspoken words, potential power never released. My people do not know what they carry, Jesus said softly. There was no anger in his voice. Only longing. Then he showed me forgiveness. I saw moments when I chose to release resentment. Quietly, imperfectly. In the unseen realm, those prayers detonated entire networks the enemy relied on. Unforgiveness had been an anchor. Forgiveness severed it instantly. Love dismantles what fear builds, Jesus said. In that moment I understood something deeper than ever before. Prayer was not about controlling outcomes. It was about relationship, trust, love, faith that stayed even when answers delayed. And I knew that what I had seen was not meant to stay with me alone. It was meant to be told. Because someone listening right now is standing on the edge of a prayer they've almost decided not to pray. And heaven is waiting. The light around me began to shift, growing warmer, closer, like a moment stretching just before goodbye. Jesus showed me one final sequence. I saw my body again, lying still, surrounded by voices I could barely recognize. Machines pulsing, hands moving quickly, a room filled with urgency and quiet fear. Time, which had meant nothing moments before, suddenly felt heavy again. I felt myself being drawn backward, not pulled, not forced, but gently guided. Remember, Jesus said, his voice steady and filled with love, salvation is not earned through perfection. It is received through faith. Prayer is not a test you pass. It is a relationship you live. Then, with a clarity that pierced me, he added, tell them that I am near. Tell them that I hear even the weakest prayer. Tell them that love opens every door the enemy tries to seal. The next sensation was weight, pain, sound. The harsh brightness of hospital lights burned my eyes as air rushed violently into my lungs. My body convulsed as if remembering how to live. I heard someone shout. Another voice cried out in disbelief. Later, I would be told that my heart had stopped for over 30 minutes. That the doctors had already begun discussing time of death. That medically what happened next made no sense. But I knew. I had been sent back. My recovery stunned everyone. No brain damage. No lasting heart complications. Tests came back clear. The words miracle and unexplainable were whispered more than once. But the real transformation happened quietly. In the days that followed, I couldn't see the unseen world anymore. But I felt it. Every time I prayed, something inside me shifted. Prayer no longer felt distant or obligatory. It felt alive. Immediate. Intimate. I prayed while brushing my teeth. I prayed while walking school hallways. I prayed when fear tried to rise, and love answered instead. 2 weeks later, I returned to work. The building looked the same. The students sounded the same. But I was different. I prayed silently over empty desks before the day began. I prayed for wisdom when students spoke about pain they couldn't name. I prayed for peace in moments I once would have carried alone. And slowly, quietly, things began to change. Students calmed. Conversations softened. Tension eased in places that once felt heavy. At home, my marriage grew stronger. Not because life became easier, but because love replaced fear. I understood now. Prayer does not remove struggle. Prayer invites God into it. And faith, pure, simple faith, creates space for grace to move. I no longer measured prayer by how I felt afterward. I trusted what I knew was happening beyond what I could see. Because I had seen it once. And that was enough to change everything. I'm sharing this now because someone listening needs to hear it. Not tomorrow. Not when life slows down. Not when you feel more spiritual or more prepared. No. What I was shown was not meant to make anyone afraid. It was meant to wake us up, to remind us of what has always been true. You are not powerless. Your prayers are not small. Your faith is not weak. Your love for God is not unnoticed. I was shown that salvation is not found in striving harder, praying longer, or speaking more eloquently. Salvation lives in simple faith, in honest prayer, and in a heart that chooses love over fear. The enemy does not fight what is ineffective. He fights prayer because prayer connects you directly to God. He fights faith because faith invites heaven to act. He fights love because love dismantles everything fear depends on. That resistance you feel when you try to pray, that sudden tiredness, the distractions, the doubts, that is not proof of failure. It is proof of significance. I was shown that heaven leans in when you pray. That angels move when faith speaks. That darkness retreats not because you are strong but because God is. You don't need perfect words. A whisper is enough. A thought turned toward God is enough. A tired prayer offered in love is enough. I was shown that every prayer matters. Every single one. Even the prayers you think didn't work. Even the prayers that felt unanswered. Even the prayers you prayed through tears and silence. Nothing offered to God in faith is wasted. If you remember anything from my testimony, remember this. God is not distant. Jesus is not disappointed in you. He is inviting you, Again and again, into relationship. Pray where you are. Pray as you are. Pray with the faith you have, not the faith you wish you had. Love God. Trust Him. Speak to Him. And don't believe the lie that it doesn't matter. Because I saw what happens when someone prays. The kingdom of darkness trembles. And the kingdom of God draws near.